Travelers, explorers, adventure seekers. With all travel bans to Caldera lifted, you may now book tickets to Caldera on Pacific Horizon Air. Caldera, a hidden paradise.
Hey, hi, howdy. It's Redneck Sparky. With the recent news of the Warzone Pacific Caldera map, we got intel into exactly what this map's gonna be. In fact, we found out it's gonna have 15 different areas. And within those areas, there's gonna be named areas that we can go and check out. Hang out while I go over the 15 areas and what we can expect in the new Caldera map. First, let's go over the areas. Now, they've divided it up into 15 sections, but looking at the map, they're definitely not equal. Some areas are larger than others. I'm not certain that these 15 areas are going to play much of a part. Maybe the storm will have something to affect it. Maybe we won't see a circle storm. Maybe it'll actually be a zone-based storm. But I just suspect this is them trying to immerse us into the new map and get us used to it. To really divide it up, maybe they used that division to help developers create the map. I don't know. Either way, the 15 areas are Arsenal, Docks, Runway, Ruins, Mines, Peak, Beachhead, Village, Lagoon, Airfield, Fields, Subpen, Submarine Pen that is, Power Plant, Capital, and Resort. Now as I go through some of the named areas, it'll be pretty apparent that these are within those areas I just listed, but it doesn't always make a whole heck of a lot of sense. It seems like they just put this map out here to really hype up the crowd and get us all thinking, oh, this map's going to be great. Which, don't get me wrong, it definitely is. I'm tired of Verdansk. But I'm more interested in exactly what those named areas are going to be versus the regions that they have listed here. Either way, Operation Vulcan on the new Warzone Pacific map, Caldera, is going to be epic. The first named area is Naval Arsenal. And it looks pretty good, much like all of these areas do. They define it as a sprawling shipyard and an advanced base in Caldera's northwest area. It's going to have inside and outside fighting, just like any Warzone map should, but also it's going to have unique dry dock basins that are going to have some high ground and low ground advantages and disadvantages. There's going to be a cluster of large buildings further inland, a command center, admin structure, barracks compound, training course, and firing range to be specific. But also, the beaches are going to have a small radar array found east of the main arsenal. So all things considered, it's going to be a pretty large named area, and it's going to have a lot of hot drops going in there with a lot of rotation to play at. It's going to be a pretty good area to drop in if you're looking to try and get sweaty, but I'm a little hesitant that there's going to be many dropping into the low ground points. Either way, I'm excited. Next up, Industrial Docks. Now this is basically a reskin of Shipment. It looks a lot like the Modern Warfare version of it versus the Vanguard map, which is odd, but I guess they have to stick to the theme of the Caldera map. It seems a little more modern than what you would probably expect in the World War II era, or at least from my perspective, I wouldn't think it would look like this. This image it has a forklift on it. Either way, I'm probably not going to be sticking around there very long because it's so small. They define it as a once managed ocean freight company area. It's a large-scale industrial dock complex. There we go. It's not going to just be the Shipment map. But there are going to be superstructures of 5 massive cranes surrounding it, a giant ship hangar, the company's long-abandoned headquarters, an entire shipyard. Emphasis on the word shipment. You get what they're doing there. It's the map Shipment surrounded by a whole bunch more shipyard type things. There's going to be bridges and a lot of points of interest like fuel tanks, phosphate containers, refineries from the mines and Peak, a military base, barracks, and a fishing village of bamboo residents near the runway's untouched jungles. So it's going to be meshed in between, it seems like, the military base, the runway, and a fishing village that's going to be popping up here later on. But while we're on the topic of the runway, it's another named area. It's the main artifact of Caldera Terminal airstrip. It's southwest, where most of the aircrafts take off, and it's a secondary runway in the northeastern corner of Caldera. So it's going to be by the beachhead of the Arsenal Docks complex, just like we mentioned, with an area half in the jungle. So it seems like you're going to have a lot of rotation opportunity here where you can come in not just in an open environment, but also kind of sneak in from the side or behind. So you're coming through the jungle, or potentially you're just coming in through some of the adjacent docks buildings. But further into the jungle, there's going to be a military command center with its own share of secrets, as they explain it, as well as it's going to rest next to some farmsteads and a bunch of rocks that might be right next to or on the coastal areas. Either way, it's a pretty open environment that I wouldn't want to get stuck out on. Compared to the Verdansk map, it's probably going to be pretty similar to those runways where you don't want to be caught out there without much cover. And based on the image, there's not a whole lot other than a Jeep and an airplane, maybe a few more, and who knows if you can actually get in those yet. They did say that we were expecting some new vehicles and potentially some dogfighting, but I'm not so sure that means that these two vehicles in the image are going to be usable by players. Next up is the ruins, which basically looks like a jungle temple that they're just trying to preserve. In fact, they call it an untouched archaeological site that is mimicking natural volcanic geological columns next to a flowing stream, and east through the jungle you can discover larger ruins within the hillside forest. It says there's other surprises, but I gotta assume this one's not going to be too much of a big area because it's a lot more rural, and it's going to be a lot easier to have kind of guerrilla warfare, which to me is more like corner camping in the eyes of Warzone. But hey, we'll see whenever it comes out. Next up, the Phosphate Mines. It's a massive operation of mining buildings where they excavate, refine, transport, and everything with this phosphate. They can investigate the large factory, look for older mine workings, or, of course, there's some redacted elements of this place. But I'd assume it's going to have a lot of little buildings, big buildings, similar to what we're expecting or what we're used to on the Verdansk mine area, the salt mine. Either way, there's going to be some residual buildings like a gas station and a grocery store, and some unloading bays, containment pools, etc. Stuff that's going to be surrounding it. So it's not just going to be a mine, but perhaps a little built up, so it's a little more immersive and it's a little more realistic to what you'd expect to be around areas where, people work. What kind of Call of Duty would it be without some sort of mountain overlook? Sure enough, we've got this place called the Peak. They say it's the high ground, dominating the center of the map. It's a colossal peak of a dormant volcano. So you can expect there's going to be a lot of people rushing for the high ground, especially if the storm's moving in, and it being the center of the map to really get the advantage whenever the circle starts closing in. Either way, they say it should be an area hot drop because it is a main gondola station that shuttles from the peak toward the runway or the magma chamber and what was built during its slumber. To me, that just means there's a couple ways in and out of this place, even if you're on ground and you're taking one of these gondolas, and it's probably going to have a lot of people fighting to be king of the hill, which I'm okay with. Next up, the beachhead. This one looks a lot more what I'd expect in a World War II style game. It's got some of those artilleries overlooking a peak where you can just see right into the beach. It's cut into the dunes of the island's northwest coast and has a bunch of trenches and what you'd expect in a World War II game. It's got a communication center, radar array, barracks, large-scale military compound, all built in anticipation of, wouldn't you know it, a beachfront storming. To the south, there are battery emplacements and a village of bamboo homes sitting on either side of the river. There's plenty of places to get in and out, whether that be a road, a track, footpath, goat trails, etc. All in all, it's going to be one of those places that's just kind of off nook by itself and easily accessible through multiple directions. You'll definitely want to watch out for who's got the high ground here, because if you get caught out in the open and you're down low, you can consider yourself gone. Next up, we have the River Village, which looks a lot like an Eastern, Pacific style village. It's going to be an area that has the remains of a cargo ship and a recent gun emplacements, probably because this is a world war, and the foothills west of the peak. The village has bamboo huts and ridges and paddy fields and stuff you'd expect to see in a Pacific style village. The difference is that it's going to add a little bit more to it because it's going to have the wilderness as well as that cargo ship and a little more modern structures from the 1930s versus an old school village look. It's going to be cut sort of into the hillside with anti-aircraft emplacements, so you can definitely find some cover and some high ground. But it's going to have a lot of traffic because it's going to be adjacent to the airfield. Likely a lot of runway people are going to be crossing over from this or to this throughout the game. Next, we have the Clearwater Lagoon, and this looks like a vacation destination, except the lighthouse kind of looks like it's a little run down. It's basically just that, a lighthouse that overlooks a shallow bay that you can probably get into that really just has a couple bamboo huts alongside it, and maybe a few more modern looking homes. You can get into the lagoon, but other than that, there's not a whole lot here. It says you can try and find the secrets that remain in Captain Butcher's plane, which is probably going to be some sort of contract at some point, likely in Season 1 early on. Whether that be for an operator skin, Captain Butcher himself, or maybe a weapon skin, whatever it's going to be, a lot of these secrets are probably related to that. Next, we have the Caldera Terminal. It's the island's primary airfield. There's a lot of aircraft and buildings to explore, as well as a lot of smaller structures. You can get into the control tower. Hopefully it's not going to be as domineering as the Verdansk control tower, but if I know my Call of Duty, people are going to be hanging out in there all the time. There's a lot of hangars. There's going to be a lot of buildings near the village, and to the southern coastal border, there's going to be Allied military forces set up with their base of operation. It's no surprise there's an air traffic control tower that people are probably going to be camping in, and hangars that everybody loves to drop out early on. Next, we have the Agricultural Center. Off the image, it looks like it's going to be a lot of farming or lumber type building stuff that's really just, workshops and such. It says it's the largest main point of interest on Caldera. There's fertile agricultural fields just south of the volcano, as well as small farms all over the place, industrial depots, machinery, storage, an admin center, a water tower, stables, and so on and so forth. It's basically going to be a rural farmland, much like we see in Verdansk, but shifted around so that it's not the same old, same old. That water tower is pretty high up, as well as the rocks off to the side. So I think there's going to be a lot of verticality in this area, if not the entire Caldera map. Either way, you can suspect this area is going to be a hot drop from the get-go and probably for a very long time. There's plenty of routes to go down to Caldera's southern zones, so you can also expect that rotating around the map, this is going to be a place you see often. Then we have the Shark's Lair submarine pen. This looks absolutely epic. It looks exactly what you would imagine for a submarine pen. It's got these robust buildings with submarines in the docks, and it just looks like something that is a nightmare to try and fight with. There's high ground all over the place, and there's low ground encampments where people can just run and gun. It says it's cut into a natural cove along the eastern coast of the map, and it's the largest military installation. The ominous sub-pen nicknamed the Shark's Lair, built by Axis forces, was used to house the naval U-boats. So you can definitely see that they're going for a theme here. Those Nazis love their concrete buildings, and this one looks right up their alley. There's going to be a complete complex underground with tunnels to go around. All in all, it doesn't seem like a massive area, but definitely one that I'm assuming people are going to want to see pretty quickly. Next up, we have the Caldera power plant. This looks pretty similar to what you would expect a power plant to look like, with some give and take. You've got some smokestacks in the back that look like some kind of refinery, and some buildings that are probably administrative buildings leading up to this radio tower. And I've got to say that radio tower looks really familiar. Anybody see a resemblance to the Verdansk radio towers by chance? We're definitely going to have some campers there. Either way, they say it's a medium-sized power plant with a pair of smokestacks that dominate the upper floodplain just south of the airfield. It's got lush greenery, stepped waterfalls, and ancient ruins found elsewhere in the area. You can go further south to find a large radio antenna and a civilian radio station. Next up, we have the Caldera capital city. This looks pretty awesome. It looks something right out of an old London movie or something like that, with this nice architecture that's a lot more modern, something you'd see in Europe or perhaps somewhere else in a more built-up non-island world. Either way, it's a huge natural basin on the southern shores of the island. It's the main city of Caldera and has a variety of historical structures, the Royal Theater, the Capitol building, the Art Deco structures like the fire station and police station, set on either side of a working tramway system. Working tramways got me interested. Are we going to have a train like we had in Verdansk, or is this going to be a smaller tram that isn't going to be as massive? Either way, I'm looking forward to the fail videos of all the people getting ran over by it. Last is the Royal Cabana Resort. It's basically a hotel surrounded by sandy beaches in a place that you would expect a vacation at. I don't think you're going to get much relaxation here though, because there's a lot of places for folks to go through in and out of the building, up and down, as well as some small square and clock tower, bus station, and hotel entrance. The grounds of the resort are large and lush with shallow pools, ferns, and palm trees, it says, but I can't imagine that there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of people sightseeing what's around it. I'm curious though, which one are you looking most forward to? I definitely think there's going to be a lot more named regions than what we've seen, and if not named, at least some areas that are more hot than others. But as the game goes further on, people end up finding those in-between areas. You know, I might go in between the runway and the ruins or something like that, because there's a few buildings that almost always guarantee me a relatively good loot. Either way, I'm curious what your thoughts are. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like. If you really enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to know whenever I make new content and release it out, hit that little bell icon for notifications. This is Redneck Sparky. I appreciate your time. I'm out.